Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala nabi. Chapter 31. The author says, باب حكم بول الطفل الرضيع وكيفية غسله. The ruling on a young child's urine, an infant's urine, and how to wash it. What is the ruling, i.e., is it clean, is it unclean, is it pure, is it impure? Is it najis or not? If it is najis, is it slightly najis or majorly najis? And if it is najis or if it isn't, how do we wash it? How do we clean a surface that was once pure, then the urine fell upon it? How do we clean it? Do we have to scrub it? Do we have to wash it with water, with sand, with dirt, etc.? That's what's meant by the chapter heading. In this chapter, there are, two hadiths that the author mentions, Hadith 163 and 164. He says, Hadith Aisha radiallahu anha قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يؤتى بالصبيان فيدعو لهم فأتي بصبي فبال على ثوبه فدعا بماء فأتبعه إياه ولم يغسل. حديث أم قيس بنت محصن أنها أتت بابن لها صغير لم يأكل الطعام إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأجلسه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في حجره فبال على ثوبه فدعا بماء فنضحه ولم يغسل. Narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, 163, that the people used to bring their young children to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would pray for them. One day he was brought a young boy, a young baby boy, young child, and he urinated on him. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called for water and then poured it upon his clothes without scrubbing it. Hadith 164, narrated Qais, the daughter of Mihsan radiallahu ta'ala anha. One day she brought a small child of hers to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The child was still feeding, it wasn't yet weaned, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set the baby on his lap, and then the baby urinated on him. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he called for water, and then he poured the water or lightly sprinkled the water on his clothes without washing it, quote unquote, meaning without scrubbing it in English. Both hadiths clearly prove the same thing, regardless whether it's the same story or whether it's a different story, whether the same thing happened twice or two different stories, two different incidences. Aisha and Qais both mentioned that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had a young child in his lap. The young child, the baby, the infant, urinated on him, and then he lightly washed his clothes. That is the mahal al-shahid from both hadiths. And that's the main fiqh lesson, is that urine of a young infant is najis, whereas the Prophet ﷺ used water. And secondly, is that the urine is considered to be mukhaffaf, is slight. It's not major najasa, but it's light najasa. So those are the main fiqh rulings extracted from 163 and 164. Is that it's najis, but the najasa is mukhaffafa, as we previously explained. The different levels and types of najasa. Some najasa which is strong, some najasa which is you don't have to do but so much to remove it from your clothes or your skin or the clean and pure surface. That's the main fiqh ruling that we take from these two hadiths. As far as do the ulama of Islam agree upon this or do they differ? Then in brief, some of the scholars of Islam, they hold the view that there's a difference between a baby boy and a baby girl. And they say that the baby girl, it needs to be washed just like a grown person's urine. No difference. They say a baby girl's urine is to be washed like a grown woman or grown man's urine. And they say that a baby boy, you just have to sprinkle it, pour a little bit of water on it without having to actually scrub it. Alright? That's what some of the ulama of al-Islam say. Others, they say, is that you can just sprinkle water for both. And others say you have to wash both fully. And some may say that you don't have to do nothing for neither of the two. Khairan, inshallah, that's in brief. And those are the main fiqh rulings that we take from these two authentic prophetic narrations. Another fiqh ruling, which is not the main one, is not from the main two, is the concept of when you make wudu, when you make ghusl, so you have to massage your body parts. Do you have to stroke your arm, your feet, your face, or can you just run the water over them? Can I just put my hand under the faucet from my fingertips to my elbow and that's it? My whole entire arm is wet, but I never stroked it. If I'm washing my left hand, I never use my right hand to stroke my left arm. Do I have to move it and stroke my arm and massage it? Or can I just run my hands through the water, just pour the water on my face, so on and so forth? There's khilaf among the ulama with regards to that issue as well. As it's narrated from Imam Malik and others of the past, also Shawkani of the later ulama, those are the view that ghusl is mandatory. Yani a tadliq, that you have to actually pat and rub and stroke your body parts and not just run water over them. And other ulama held the view that it's sufficient just to pour the water over the body part. Khairan inshallah. As far as the side fawaid of these hadiths, then it shows us the kindness and the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ with children, and that he wasn't arrogant, he wasn't a tyrant, he wasn't tyrannical, he wasn't oppressive. And no matter how busy he was doing all of the different things that Allah put on his shoulders, he made time for the Sahaba to see their young children, to pray for their young children, to help out their young children. He was a merciful man. And this is a shattering blow, a paralyzing blow to those who say the Prophet was rough and crude and harsh. And the Prophet ﷺ, he had bad character and he was just a political leader and so on and so forth. It's a paralyzing blow to them. Also, it's a lesson for people today, men and women, especially the men and especially the women. No difference, obviously. For men and women, we say what? Women, one of the greatest things they complain about today is time. My husband doesn't spend enough time with me. He doesn't spend enough time with us. He's always busy. He's always tired. He comes home, he works. He comes home, he takes off his work clothes, he throws them in the hamper and he goes to sleep. My husband is always out with the brothers. I never get enough time. Women complain about money. They complain about intimacy, about love and romance, affection. Many women complain about sex. Many women, they complain about bad character and other things. Cheating, or they complain about your second wife, or whatever the case may be. But one of the greatest and most common complaints is time. He's a good guy. He's nice. He's clean. He's generous. He's loving. He fulfills my desires, but he doesn't spend enough time. I want more time with him. So realize something, sister in Islam, is that you're not married to the Prophet ﷺ. You don't have a man that had that excellent character like the Prophet ﷺ's character was. Stellar, exemplary standard of character. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah says in the Quran, indeed you, O Muhammad, are upon an exalted standard of character. Also, the admonishment for the brothers. Are you busier than the Prophet ﷺ? How many things did he have to do? He had to teach the Quran. He had to tell the companions his statements, the Sunnah. He had to fight jihad in Allah's cause. He had to fraternize and make peace between the different warring tribes. He had to break and shatter the jahiliyyah of the people, the tribalism, the people thinking that they're better than each other, and nobles and slaves and this and that. And he had to get people out of that mindset. He had to go and give da'wah to the kuffar. They rejected him, they mocked him, they made fun of him. He had to go to Medina and deal with the treacherous Jews and the slimy, slithering munafiqeen of Medina. And yet still he had time for young children to sit with them, to make dua for them and to pray for them. Okay, so this goes to show is that if the Prophet made time, then you should make time as well. And I don't think no matter what you're doing, how busy or stressed or tired you may be, you're not busier than the Prophet ﷺ. So make time for your family, make time for your children. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. And this goes to show that the Prophet was just a great leader. And, you know, the concept of offering yourself to the people and what the people will offer to you once you show how much it is you'll give them. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. So those are the main fiqh rulings of the hadith and the main fawaid of the hadith. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this hadith, وفيه مقصود الباب وأن بول الصبي يكفي فيه النضح وقد اختلف العلماء في كيفية طهارة بول الصبي والجارية على 3 مذاهب وهي 3 أوجه لأصحابنا. الصحيح والمشهور المختار أنه يكفي النضح في بول الصبي ولا يكفي بول الجارية بل لا بد من غسل كسائر النجاسات، والثاني أنه يكفي النضح فيهما، والثالث لا يكفي النضح فيهما. وهذان الوجهان حكاهما صاحب تتمة من أصحابنا وغيره وهما شاذان ضعيفان. ومن قال بالفرق علي بن أبي طالب وعطاء بن أبي رباح والحسن البصري وأحمد بن حنبل وإسحاق بن راهوي وجماعة من السلف وأصحاب الحديث وابن وهب من أصحاب مالك رضي الله عنهم. وروي عن أبي حنيفة وممن قال بوجوب غسلهما أبو حنيفة ومالك في المشهور عنهما وأهل الكوفة. واعلم أن هذا الخلاف إنما هو في كيفية تطهير الشيء الذي بال عليه الصبي ولا خلاف في نجاسته. وقد نقل بعض أصحابنا إجماع العلماء على نجاسة بول الصبي وأنه لم يخالف فيه إلا داود الظاهري قال الخطابي وغيره إلى آخره. He speaks about this by saying three main views of the ulama with regards to the urine of a young child. And what's meant by the young child is a child that is still breastfeeding, that has not yet been fully weaned. لم يأكل الطعام. Hadith Qais says it doesn't mean that the baby doesn't eat any food whatsoever, but the baby is still dependent upon the mother's milk. Khairan inshallah. So if the baby takes a couple bites or a couple nibbles, or you put something mushy and soft into the baby's mouth and he eats it and plays with it, it makes a mess, it doesn't mean that it's outside of this ruling. It's still radi', still feeding. So he says here three main views of the ulama. And these three main views of all of the different ulama, the different schools, they're also awjuh. He says they're different aspects and different versions of our madhab. Once again, this shows us is that a madhab, a traditional school of thought, is not an easy, simple walk or piece of cake for everybody in every single issue. As many speakers, especially today, and unfortunately many students of knowledge, they get caught up and thinking that the comparative fiqh or the fiqh of Ahl al-Hadith and the fiqh of the books of the Sunnah is so hard, it's so confusing, it's not orthodox, it's untraditional, and I have to study a madhab. And that's the proper way of fiqh. And if you don't have a madhab, you're not going to understand fiqh. You can't study fiqh, you can't teach fiqh. You're going to be confused, and you're just going to get sucked up and swallowed into the gigantic whirlpool of khilaf. And they oftentimes push this and sell this to the people, whether they do it intentionally or unintentionally. Many of them, no doubt, they don't even know, because they're not penetrating the depths of their own madhab. And there's some people, Allahu musta'an, it seems as if they do it intentionally to deceive the people and to sell their product. That the madhab is so easy, it's so simple. When you actually read the books and study, you can clearly see that the madhab itself has different opinions, different views. There's khilaf in the Shafi'i madhab itself. And it's not just simple and easy, and you take one view and that's it. And that's how the people try to make it seem. Now, obviously, they're going to say, well, they can take just the wajh mashhur, one well-known view, the mu'tamad. The ulama of madhab Shafi'i, they differ over what's mu'tamad, and what's mashhur, and what's the sawab, and so on and so forth. So just as you can say they can take a simple view in the Shafi'i madhab, we can say they can take a simple fatwa of Sheikh bin Baz or whoever. And it doesn't have to be they get into the khilafat, the shadid, the severe fights among the ulama. Now they're going to say, well, the madhab provides safety, security, simplicity. It's all in one place. It's all been documented. We're not here to deny and reject the different benefits of having a madhab. There are benefits in it, but there are also harms. And we're not saying follow, don't follow, study, don't follow, don't study. We're just trying to prove the shallowness of those people who try to make it seem that it's so simple and so easy, and it's just perfectly set out and laid out for the layman Muslim. That's not true. That is deceit. So therefore, he says there are three views of the ulama, and these three views are also three aspects of our madhab as well. He then goes on to say that that the young boy, his urine can just be sprinkled, water can be sprinkled upon, and the actual girl has to be washed. That's the correct view in the Shafi'i madhab that he says. And he says in the other two views in the Shafi'i madhab are weak, and they're not correct in the Shafi'i madhab. He's not talking about outside of the madhab yet. Okay? And that is that one view is that he says the urine is what? You can sprinkle water upon both of them, the baby boy and the baby girl. And the third is that it's insufficient for both. Insufficient for both. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. He says, as far as the ulama have the view that there is a difference between the boy's urine and the girl's urine, then it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ata ibn Abi Rabah, Hassan al-Basri, obviously all from the Salaf, Sahaba and the Tabi'een, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, and a group from the Salaf and Ashab al-Hadith. Also Abdullah ibn Wahab from the companions of Imam Malik. Obviously, it goes to show you how he wasn't a blind follower and he wasn't a staunch and fanatical bigot of Malik. Like many people today, unfortunately they say they're Maliki and they're total just blind followers that are fanatical. They don't use their minds. Summun, bukmun, umyun. They're just deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to anything, any hadith, any narration, any common sense, and say, I'm Maliki. I take the madhab of Malik. That's unfortunate. He then says, and this view was also mentioned to be the view of Imam Abu Hanifa. It wasn't the most popular view, but it's Rubiya. It's mentioned, some said this was Abu Hanifa's view. He then says, from the ulama, and that also shows us is that an imam has more than one view. He has different students, different disciples. If he lives for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years teaching, then obviously he's going to change his opinion. So it goes to show you that the fallacy of the simplicity and the total and absolute ease of a madhab that's a lie. That's not true. He then says, from the ulama who have the view that you have to wash both of them, that is not, it actually has to be actually a ghusl, washing and scrubbing, was Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik fil mashhur. He says the well-known view. The well-known view. Okay? As we just explained, that there can be different views. One is more well-known than the other. And it also goes to show another contradiction with regards to those who have madhabs and those who don't have madhabs, with regards to the people who refute Abu Hanifa and they say he khalaf al-athar, he went against the athar in this issue and that issue, and everything he says is against the athar and there's no hadith, it's all ra'i, it's all aqal, it's all his intellect and so on and so forth, Ahl Kufa. Okay, but they don't say it about Imam Malik. They won't say any of those words about Imam Malik. They'll never say Imam Malik khalaf al-athar. They'll never say Imam Malik just was ra'i and aqal. Here, Abu Hanifa and Malik have the same view. Fil mashhuri anhuma. So if you refute Abu Hanifa for making mukhalaf of the athar, then refute Imam Malik as well. Whereas he had the same view. And this is many different instances like this. You find a clear-cut hadith, and Imam Malik says, I never saw none of the people of Medina doing it. I never saw any of Ahl Medina doing it. هذا عندنا. He says, لا يفعل هذا إلا الفساق عندنا. So on and so forth. He'll always quote Ahl Medina, Ahl Medina, Ahl Medina. And that is one of his main props in his madhab. Rather, you may find some instances in which he may take what the people of Medina over other texts. And then they'll look into the text of the Quran and Sunnah, things like this. Okay, perhaps you can find examples of that if you read Mudawwana al-Kubra carefully. What's important is that is a bit of contradiction and hypocrisy among the people who constantly attack Abu Hanifa. And we're not here to defend Abu Hanifa, or we're not here to slander him. We're just making a point. They constantly attack Abu Hanifa on fiqh issues in which they say he went against the hadith, but they won't say them about Imam Malik. Now, I feel that's unfair. Obviously, Imam Malik had different views and statements about the Sunnah, its importance, and no doubt, okay, the atmosphere was different, the politics was different, the time was different, but the point is the same, is that Malik takes Ahl al-Madinah. Ahl al-Madinah's view is not nas, it's not text. Did all the Sahabas stay in Medina? No, they didn't. Many of them left. Abdullah Mas'ud, he went to Iraq. He went there too. That's where the people of Kufa, that's the Islam goes back to. And Mu'adh bin Jabal went to Shem. And this campaign, Abdullah bin Amr ibn As and Fulan and Alan, they went to different parts of the world. They didn't all stay in Medina. So all of the hadith and sunnah did not remain in Medina. Did the people of Medina have a miza? Did they have a distinction? Of course they did. There wasn't bid'ah that was widespread. There were no non-Muslims there. There were outward non-Muslims. They had munafiqeen, but there weren't non-Muslims that were apparent. Okay, it was no Zoroastrians and people like this. All the people were under the Muslims there. All right, there was no outward kufr in Medina. Okay, there were no different ideologies and cultures. Even the technology and the science and astrology and astronomy, it wasn't like that in Medina because the Arabs were simple people. They were small, basic people. They didn't have that technology that they had in Iraq and they had in Iran, Mesopotamia. So the people who lived in Iraq, they met all different types of civilizations there. as we all know, after Qadisiyah and their great battle. So they met people that had knowledge, that had Jewish ancestry. They met people that had ilm of the stars, of navigation, all right? So their way of thinking was different in Iraq than it was in Medina. So there was more purity in Medina. There was less bid'ah in Medina. Now, the people didn't have to be fought extensively as they had to be subjugated in Iraq and Iran. Is the difference. A huge difference now, okay? And the historical context is totally different. All right. Also, they had very short chain of narrations that went right to the Sahaba, to the Prophet short. Whereas people from Kufa and other places had to have more men in the name and the narration. Okay. And different things like this. But the point is that all the Sahaba didn't stay in Medina, and if they all didn't stay in Medina, then all of the Sunnah was in Medina. So Imam Malik's philosophy was, if the people of the Prophet's city, these tabi'een who learned from the Sahaba, if they're not doing it, if it's unknown to them, then it obviously isn't correct, it isn't authentic, it isn't well known. And theoretically, that's not a poor theory. Theoretically, that makes sense. But there's time which is clear sunnah, clear athar. And Malik would say, Ahl al-Madinah. So if you refute Abu Hanifa, you have to refute Imam Malik as well. Because what the people of Medina are doing is, one way or another, is considered right. It's aql to an extent. It's what he thinks is right based off of what they're doing. And none of those people of Medina are Muhammad sallallahu. None of them. Ahl Medina is not Muhammad. Ahl Medina is not the Prophet, is not Sahaba. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he was a student of Zuhri. Zuhri was from the Sigar Tabi'een. He was from the minor Tabi'een, not the major ones, not the middle ones at all, the middle rank ones, the intermediate Tabi'eens. He's from the Sigar Tabi'een. He only narrated from Anas bin Malik. So therefore, Malik only met a handful, a tiny handful, if not just Zuhri, a small number of Sigar Tabi'een. So how can he base his madhab and say this is what's correct just because of what these people are doing from the handed down tradition? We said that theoretically, hypothetically, that makes sense. As Shaykh Islam Taymi gives detailed discussion of the ranks and the maratib of Amal al-Madinah. But to make it as an absolute principle and not to take the other hadiths just because of al-Madinah is going to lead to error. And oftentimes, this is going to lead to modern day mistakes as well. Whereas the sunnah is clear as day, the hadith is authentic. This is what the tabi'een did, Ata, Fulan, this is what they say, well, it is not from the tradition of the Muslims here in this country. Well, it's unknown to the Muslims in Mauritania, so we're not going to do it. And that's very problematic. Khairan, inshallah. He then says, and know for sure that this khilaf here is only pertaining to the fabric and how to clean it and wash it. As far as the actual najasa of the urine, and that's no khilaf of the ulama regarding the urine being najis. As we said, it is only supposed to be what? Mukhaffafa. Khairan, inshallah. Then we have other issues here with regards to do you have to wring out the clothes? Wring them out? Or is it sufficient just to pour the water on top of it? And the water that stays on top, is that considered najis now? Obviously, these issues are only going to be applied when we have a little bit of water, a short period of time, we're in a rush or an emergency. But nowadays, alhamdulillah, water is so available. You can buy water in a bottle. You go to the supermarket, you go to 7-Eleven in Sunoco, you stop, and you can literally stand in there for 10 minutes arguing and fighting with yourself what brand of water I want to buy. Do I want Avion water? Do I want Voss water? Do I want Smart water? Do I want Poland Spring? Do I want Deer Park? Do I want this one or that one? Glass, and so on and so forth. So much water to buy, alhamdulillah. You can sit in your house and literally cut on the faucet and let it run for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You can flood your bathroom and kitchen if you wanted to, because water is so available now through modern means of technology. In those times, water was extremely scarce, and there was a great drought, let alone Arabia was a very arid land. So the people using water and wasting water, being economic and efficient with water, was of high importance. So therefore, if the baby urinates on your clothes, you get up, you go to the sink, you can wash it. Rather, you can take off your clothes and change your clothes. And it's very simple, very easy nowadays. You can pull out a wipe and so on and so forth. Khairan, inshallah. Also, the nadh, the water being sprinkled or poured or washed, is only pertaining to the baby that is still suckling. As far as when the child is weaned, then it becomes totally najis, just like normal urine. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. Let's move on to the next chapter. Chapter 32. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, باب غسل المني في الثوب وفركه حديث عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها أنها سئلت عن المني يصيب الثوب فقالت كنت أغسله من ثوب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيخرج إلى الصلاة وأثر الغسل في ثوبه بقع الماء. Chapter 32 says, washing the traces of semen on one's garment, and also scraping the traces of semen or actual dried semen from one's garment. Once more, washing it with water and scraping it off when it's dry, i.e., just as we said in the previous chapter about the simplicity and practicality of Islam. Islam is a religion that tells us to get married and have children. Islam is a religion that teaches us to be clean and to be pure. So, and Islam also teaches us to spend time with our children and our families. So with that being the case, we have A, we have B. Or A, we have A, we have C. Or A, C, and D. Where's B? And that is, if you have the baby with you, it's going to eventually, as I say, pee on your clothes. If you are commanded to get married and to be intimate with your wife, and also commanded to be clean and be pure with the sperm, with the semen, the seminal fluid, so on and so forth, it gets on the bed, on the cover, your clothes, so on and so forth, your underpants, etc. So this shows us the simplicity and the practicality of Islam, and that Islam is meant to give us solutions. And an example of this in today's modern times is money, wealth. The Quran teaches us to seek Allah's rizq. The Quran teaches us to eat from the fine things. The Quran teaches us that Allah made everything in the dunya for our sake. And we as Muslims have the most right to quality and to good fine things. The tayyibat min ar-rizq, kulu min tayyibati. Allah says, eat from the fine things that razaqnakum, we have given you as provision. And the Quran also tells us, do not eat riba, avoid riba, stay away from riba. So therefore, that's A and that's C. Where's B? B is making a living, having good things, having quality things, and not being caught up in the snare of riba. There has to be a solution. If we have point A and we have point C, and the person feels lost and confused, that means the faqih, the da'iyah, the imam, the scholar, the sheikh, he is not presenting the proofs and evidences properly. He's not understanding them properly. He's not applying them properly. There's something missing which allows us to leave off B and feel the haraj. And then we actually feel the pressure of the rulings. It's a hardship to have a house in America. It's a hardship. That's not Islam. Khairan, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam, the Sharia of Islam, at times, there are rulings which are challenging. And it takes sacrifice. But it's never meant to just put you into a vice grip and make things hard and burdensome for you. So the same applies to the concept of a man being intimate with his wife. There's a big chance, a big possibility of there being fluids, her fluids, his fluids, on clothes. So what to do? Hadith number 165 is the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, in which she was asked about many semen that's on one's garment. She said, كنت أغسله من ثوب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I used to wash it off the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم's clothes. And he would go out to the salah, he'd go to the masjid, وأثر الغسل فيه أو في ثوبه, and the traces of the semen, of the washed semen, will be on his clothes. بقع الماء, where the water was on his clothes. So 165, the main fiqh ruling shows us is that semen was washed in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, as we've explained before, due to the fact that these hadiths are only in Bukhari and Muslim, hadiths are only from Bukhari and Muslim, there are other rulings, other hadiths that are not going to be mentioned. And that is outside of Bukhari and Muslim and Sahih Muslim, let alone outside of Sahih Muslim, there are hadiths of Aisha and others that talk about semen being on the clothes. scraping it, washing it, sprinkling water on it. But the author is only going to mention hadith as agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim. So this shows you that if you want a complete fiqh study of the sunnah, you cannot just study hadiths that are agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim. Okay? And that's also another mistake and another fallacy of many people they make. They say what? Just leave off all the other hadiths. Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, don't even deal with it. Just still Bukhari and Muslim. Because there's a difference of opinion, whether they're authentic or not. We just Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari and Muslim is not going to give you a whole and total aspect of fiqh. Bukhari and Muslim are selected narrations, especially Imam al-Bukhari. It was very fine, it was very, very finicky in taking hadiths and putting them in his book. Every hadith in his book, he did not claim that was the only hadith, the only thing that was authentic. He didn't claim to collect every authentic hadith. But he was very finicky, like a cat. He wanted his book to be a special, classy, luxurious book made for certain people, only made for certain people. And that's it. If you like it, you like it. If you can benefit from it, if you can't, that's not Imam al-Bukhari's care or concern. He wrote his book with a special intention, and he wanted only special, selected things to be in his book. It was only built for certain people. So with that being said, there are many hadiths that give all types of details and fiqh rulings, fundamental fiqh rulings, that are not going to be found in Sahih Bukhari. And the same applies to Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim wrote his book in a different manner, but Imam Muslim was also very selective as well. Not as selective as Bukhari, but he was very, very, very meticulous and scrupulous as well. So this is extremely important for the student of knowledge, the beginner, intermediate, and also layman Muslim. All authentic narrations are not in Bukhari and in Muslim. All fiqh rulings are not found in the hadiths of Bukhari and Muslim. So with that being said, the hadith of Aisha 165 shows us is that she used to wash it. Now, this hadith does not state under any circumstance that the Prophet ﷺ commanded her to wash it. So one can't say that it's recommended or obligatory, and that the mani is najis. Also, due to the fact that the Prophet went out to the masjid with the stain, the water, that doesn't necessarily mean that he told her to do it as well. So one may say, غاية ما في هذا الحديث, the most to be taken in this hadith is the mashru'iyya, is that it's legitimate, okay, to wash the stains of semen from one's clothes. Also, we take from this hadith is Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she gave the fatwa based off of what she used to do. And she didn't say the Messenger of Allah said, the Messenger of Allah did, but she gave the fatwa what she used to do. Did the Messenger of Allah acknowledge her in washing it, going to the masjid with the clothes? Perhaps. And perhaps he didn't. What's important is Aisha, she told the people what she did. In brief, we know Aisha radiallahu anha often would mention her opinion and her view on many issues, and oftentimes she would be very staunch and very rigid in her views against other Sahaba. And that's not, once more, is not absolutely a dalil or hujjah because of what she understood. There's no disrespect to Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, or any of the Sahaba, but this is the actual way of studying fiqh, is that Aisha radiallahu anha was mujtahida. She was independent. She had her views, which she was entitled to. She was a direct disciple of the Prophet ﷺ. She studied under him. She had an intimate relationship with him like no other. But that does not mean that she knew everything. It does not mean she heard everything. It does not mean that she came across everything. It does not mean that all of her understandings were correct and proper. As one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, it's mentioned that it was said that Aisha rejects and repudiates what you're doing. And he said Aisha was adorning herself and putting on jewelry when we were with the Prophet ﷺ fighting jihad in Allah's cause. So this is from the hadith that she didn't get because she was also a wife. And so the point that we're trying to get to is that there's always two sides of the pendulum. It swings in both directions. Hudayfa radiallahu anhu narrated the Prophet ﷺ urinated standing up. And the hadith is in Sahihain. And Aisha narrated, whoever says the Prophet ﷺ stood up and urinated, don't believe him. فَلَا تُصَدِّقُوهُ. Don't believe that he ever did. Hudayfa, we can't say he's a liar. He narrated the Prophet did it. So Aisha did not know everything. That's first and foremost. She was not in every battle. She was not there from the beginning of Islam in the early days, first and foremost. Secondly, Aisha, just like the other Sahaba, they had views. Umar had a view. Abu Bakr had a view. Hudayfa had a view. Abu Hurairah had a view and opinion. It does not mean that it is correct and absolute, and everyone has to follow their views in every single issue. The hujjah is the absolute hujjah is in the Prophet ﷺ's words. Khairan, inshallah. Moving on to the Sharh al-Nawawi, because obviously al-Nawawi is going to get into the other hadiths that are in Sahih Muslim that deal with the issue. He says here, اختلف العلماء في طهارة مني الآدمي. He says the ulama of Islam, they differ on the issue of human semen. Not semen that comes from animals, he says humans, آدمي. فذهب مالك وأبو حنيفة إلى نجاسته إلا أن أبا حنيفة قال يكفي في التطهير فركه إذا كان يابسا ورواية عن أحمد وقال مالك لا بد من غسله رطبا ويابسا. He says here, as far as Malik and Abu Hanifa, then they hold the view that the semen of a man is najisa, it's impure. If it's impure, then obviously, as we explained before, there's a list of rulings that now come in play. You cannot pray with the garment, you cannot pray on top of the prayer rug, you cannot pray upon the bed, you cannot touch it directly. And also if it's najis, then there are other different modern rulings such as oral sex. Can you have oral sex? Can a woman perform oral sex on her husband if the semen is najis? Can he, and we're not trying to be explicit, but this is a part of the studies, can he put his semen on her face, on her tongue, in her mouth? Can she swallow it? Can she eat it? This is a reality now. Because if it's najis, then there's a list of rulings that now apply, as we've explained in the classes before. Once something is affirmed to be najis, then there's ahkam that have to come into existence. Just like something is tahir, there are things that come into existence. You can sell it, you can buy it, you can do this, and you can do that. If it's najis, you cannot sell it, you cannot buy it, you cannot touch it, you cannot, etc. You're not supposed to come to direct contact with najasa. So therefore, the first view is that it's najis. And this was the view of Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa. Once more, as we said before, if someone refutes Abu Hanifa for going against the athar, then they also have to refute Imam Malik. And if not, then it's unfair and just bullying and picking on Abu Hanifa. Moving forward, Abu Hanifa said that if the semen is dry, then all you have to do is scrape it off. You don't have to actually wash it. Okay? And that's also one of the different versions of the madhab of Imam Ahmad. Once more, to show you the intricacies of madhabs, and it's not just one simple view. Imam Malik said that the semen has to be washed, whether it's dry or fresh. So, let's make an example. There's semen on the covers, one's sheets. It has to be washed, whether it's fresh or whether it's dry. Abu Hanifa said, when it's dry, all you have to do is just scrape it off. Khairan, inshallah. And also goes back to what we mentioned before about the scarcity of water in the past. Moving forward, An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وقال الليث هو النجس ولا تعاد الصلاة منه وقال الحسن لا تعاد الصلاة من المني في الثوب وإن كان كثيرا وتعاد منه في الجسد وإن قل. He then says, Imam Layth ibn Sa'ad, who was from the contemporaries of Imam Malik, and many said he had more knowledge than Imam Malik, and many said that he was closer to the Sunnah than Imam Malik, but he didn't have good students. He didn't have loyal, faithful disciples. Layth said that it's najis, that human semen is impure. But if it's on you, then you don't have to make up the salat again. You don't have to make up the salat again. Hasan al-Basri said, if the mani is on the garment, you don't have to make up the salah. But if it's on one's body, then you have to make up the salah. He says, even if it's a lot on your clothes, you don't have to make your salah again. If it's a little bit on your body, then you have to make the salah up again. Very interesting points here. When we see the different views of the classical ulama, there's ulama of the salaf now. They say that there's agreement, there's najasa, ijtinab najasa, you have to make up salah. All of these different views are not agreed upon, and the different formulations and evolutions of these different madhabs are not always agreed upon as well, as we can clearly see here. And it's the benefit of reading the classical works. Moving forward, النووي رحمه الله تعالى, he says, وذهب كثيرون إلى أن المني طاهر. وروي ذلك عن علي بن أبي طالب وسعد بن وقاص وابن عمر وعائشة وداود وأحمد في أصح الروايتين ومذهب الشافعي وأصحاب الحديث. He says here, and there are many of the ulama who hold the view that semen is pure, that it's tahir, it's not najis. From these ulama, or from the people who have been quoted to have said this, is Ali ibn Abi Talib, from the Sahaba, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Aisha. From the ulama who came later on was Dawood ibn Ali al-Zahiri, the founder of the Zahiri school of thought. Also Imam Ahmad, fi asah riwayatain, he says in the most correct of the narrations of his madhab. Once more showing you that a madhab is not just one view. He then says, and this is the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i, and the madhab of the people of Hadith, Ashab al-Hadith. وقد غلط من أوهم أن الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى منفرد بطهارته. He says, and those who say that Shafi'i is the only one who said it is pure, he says that they are mistaken. We see An-Nawawi defending his Imam. Moving forward, he says, وَدَلِيلُ الْقَائِلِينَ بِالنَّجَاسَةِ رِوَايَةُ الْغَسْلِ وَدَلِيلُ الْقَائِلِينَ بِالطَّهَارَةِ رِوَايَةُ الْفَرْقِ فَلَوْ كَانَ نَجِسًا لَمْ يَكْفِي فَرْقُهُ كَالدَّمِ وَغَيْرِهِ قالوا برواية الغسل محمولة عن الاستحباب والتنزه واختيار النظافة والله أعلم. He says here, the proof for those who say that it is impure is the narration that says ghasl, I used to wash it. And the proof for those who say that it is pure is the narration that says farq, I used to scrape it off, bidhufari, with my fingernail. They say if it was impure, then it would be insufficient to be left. You can't leave the najas on the clothes and then scrape it later on, you got to wash it. Just like dam, meaning the blood of menses, menstrual blood. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. So this goes to show how one hadith with the different versions and narrations can be used in more than one way. And you can't always necessarily rush and say someone is against the sunnah, someone is not following the sunnah. Be careful what you say. Watch your tongue, O student of knowledge, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're just in the junior stages, you're in the middle of your studies, especially if you yourself are not that intense in your own readings and research. Be careful. Especially if you're only taking from modern day scholars. You read the books of Ibn Uthaymeen, Albani, and Ibn Baz, and then you say this person's not following the sunnah. And it's no disrespect to those three alims. We're trying to make a point. You're not even digging into the actual deep classical books of fiqh and hadith and shuruhat. And then you say someone is not following the sunnah. Be careful with your tongue, O student of knowledge. Be careful what you say about others. Moving forward. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, these people, they say that the narration of ghusl, of washing, he says mahmula, is interpreted to mean that it was something that was a good thing to do, and that it was unsightly, and that's the only reason why she washed it, and she didn't wash it because it was najis. There's a long argument on whether the mani is tahir or not. They have the different proofs and arguments. Some of them, they say, how can the original creation of man be impure? How can the asl of man be najis? Okay? That is not necessarily a really strong point, whereas one can say the same with regards to blood. Okay, Allah says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. He created man from a clot of blood. Where does the clot of blood come from? Where does it exit from? And the people, they say that all blood is najis. Most of the ulama hold the view that all blood is najis. Some say it's just the blood of menses and other things that have been clearly mentioned in Kitab and the Sunnah. And that's the correct view, is that all blood is not najis. If you get a paper cut or a cut on your finger, it's not najis. That's the correct view. However, most of the ulama, some of them say it's ijma', that all blood is najis. So man comes from blood. So that's a long discussion and argument in itself as well. Khairan inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nawawi then says, هذا حكم مني الآدمي ولنا قول شاذ ضعيف أن مني المرأة نجس دون مني الرجل وقول أشذ منه أن مني المرأة برجل نجس والصواب أنهما طاهران. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, this is the view of the mani al-adami, a human. And then he goes on to talk about mani al-mar'a. He says the mani, and the word mani is sometimes translated to mean semen, sometimes translated to mean sperm, and sometimes it can be translated to mean sexual fluid, because he's talking about a woman's sexual fluid. Okay? mentioning that it's pure. Khair inshallah. Now, Nawawi mentions a very interesting topic here. And we know Nawawi died in the 7th century. He wasn't from America. So many people, they say the different issues are only modern day issues and so on and so on and so forth. Tayyib, listen to what Nawawi says. He says, وَهَلْ يَحِلُّ أَكْلُ الْمَنِيِّ الطَّاهِرِ فِيهِ وَجْهَانِ أظهرهما لا يحل لأنه مستقذر فهو داخل في جملة الخبائث المحرمة علينا وأما مني باقي الحيوان إلى آخره. He then says here, is it permissible to eat semen or to eat sperm? That's what Nawawi says. He posed this question. He says, the sperm which is tahir, is it permissible or not? He says there are two main views in our madhab, and the most apparent of the two is that you can't, because it's mustaqdar, it's looked down upon. And if it's looked down upon, then it is included in the khaba'ith, things which are filthy, that a Muslim is not supposed to eat. وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهُمُ الْخَبَائِث, as Allah says in the Quran, Surah Al-A'raf. Now, the modern day application of this is the different culture today of oral sex. A very commonly widespread question, is oral sex permissible? Some say it is, some say it isn't, so on and so forth. And then the different furu'at, the branches of oral sex. Is it permissible for me to ejaculate in my wife's mouth? They ask this question. A woman asks, is it permissible for me to swallow the semen and the fluid in my mouth or not? Obviously, that's going to be based off of this issue right here. If it's najis, if it is najis, or it isn't najis, but if it is najis, can we eat it? A very interesting issue to show you that all of these different issues of the ulama are many of them, they talked about these issues, and it's not just modern day stuff, in which many people try to make it, or it's a disgusting or filthy thing. Only the American Muslims ask questions like this. Many people, they say this. Brothers, they'll say this. Oh, the Americans are disgusting. When you go to Egypt, don't hang out with the Americans. When you go here, stay away from the Americans. The Americans, they just talk, they think about sex. And that's not absolutely true. Khairan, inshallah. النووي then says, وأما مني باقي الحيوانات غير الآدمي فمنها الكلب والخنزير والمتولد من أحدهما وحيوان طاهر ومنيها نجس بلا خلاف وما عداها من الحيوانات في منيه 3 أوجه الأصح أنها كلها طاهرة ومن مأكول اللحم وغيره وثاني النجس والثالث مني إلى آخره. We'll stop there with regards to that issue. Then An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he then goes on to say, speaking on the case of Aisha scraping it with her fingernails, what she believed, so on and so forth. We mentioned that in some type of detail. We will stop here now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. We ask him for true fiqh of the deen and action upon it. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.